Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. Honestly, given today's source material, it feels pretty appropriate. Today, we are unpacking a really comprehensive consumer guide called Burial Vaults versus Graveliners.
Which I know sounds super morbid, but it is fascinating.
It is. It reads like this, I don't know, the secret masterclass from an insider in the funeral industry. And the whole mission for our deep dive today is to arm you, the listener, with this incredibly practical, money-saving knowledge.
Yeah, because this is a purchase that, unfortunately, you are probably going to have to make at some point. And usually, you're making it when you are just emotionally exhausted and, incredibly vulnerable.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be sitting in a funeral director's office trying to decipher a price list while grieving.
Yeah.
So we are going to bust some major industry myths today.
Absolutely. And I think to really get why this matters, we have to start with the physical reality of what actually happens underground. Because I think most people's baseline assumption is just completely wrong.
Right, we just assume you lower a casket into the earth, throw some dirt on top, and, well, that's it. Process finished.
Exactly. But these outer burial containers, the vaults and the liners, they exist for a very specific, honestly, almost industrial reason. They are essentially structural reinforcements.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does the earth even need reinforcing? I mean, humans have been burying people for literally thousands of years without giant concrete boxes, right?
Right, but you have to look at how cemeteries themselves have changed. Like if you picture a historical graveyard, maybe from the Victorian era, you had these mounded graves and uneven terrain.
Yeah, kind of spooky, overgrown places.
Yeah, exactly. And they were maintained mostly by hand. But modern cemeteries, especially from the mid-20th century on, they operate as these sweeping memorial parks.
Oh, right, where everything is perfectly flat?
Yes. Perfectly level grass, flush to the ground bronze markers. And to maintain that, a modern cemetery is basically a highly active, heavy machinery work zone.
Wait, really? Like construction equipment?
Oh, absolutely. You've got massive commercial riding mowers, heavy tractors, backhoes, digging adjacent graves, and all of that is rolling right over the surface.
Okay, wow.
And then you factor in the dirt itself. A single cubic yard of topsoil can weigh over 2,000 pounds.
That is just a staggering amount of weight resting directly on a casket.
It is. So over the decades, as a wooden or even a metal casket ages and breaks down, it loses its structural integrity. It just can't support those tons of soil anymore.
So it just caves in.
It caves in. And when it does, the earth above it instantly settles downward to fill that void.
Which would create this massive sinkhole right in the middle of the lawn.
Exactly. Which is a huge trip hazard for visitors. But more importantly for the cemetery, it makes it super dangerous or even impossible for their crews to drive those heavy mowers over the graves.
It's like, imagine you are shipping a really fragile, valuable family heirloom across the country.
Right.
You wouldn't just wrap it in bubble wrap and throw it in a truck. You'd put it in a heavy-duty structural shipping box that can take the weight of all the other packages stacked on top of it.
That is the perfect analogy. The entire outer burial container industry exists to be that shipping box. Cemeteries require them primarily for ground stability. It's really about landscaping and lawn maintenance, not, the pristine preservation of a body.
That detail from the source just completely blew my mind. This whole expensive requirement is basically just a landscaping policy.
It really is.
So since the main goal here is just structural support to keep the grass flat, what are our actual options? Because the guide differentiates between a graveliner and a burial vault.
Yeah.
And I feel like people just use those terms interchangeably.
Oh, they do it all the time. And that confusion can literally cost a family thousands of dollars. So let's start with the graveliner. This is your utilitarian workhorse. It's the simpler, vastly cheaper option.
Just a basic concrete box.
Yeah, essentially a reinforced concrete shell. It covers the top and the sides of the casket. And sometimes it's actually intentionally open at the bottom.
It doesn't even have a floor.
Right. No floor or just a loose-fitting base. It absolutely does not seal. It is completely porous. So groundwater seeps in. It seeps out. Insects can get in. Its one and only job is bearing the weight of the dirt and the tractors.
Got it. So that's the bare bones structural shell. Now, how does that contrast with the burial vault?
So the burial vault is the premium, heavily upgraded enclosure. It's got a heavy concrete base and a reinforced engineered cover. And unlike the liner, it is designed to completely enclose the casket.
Okay, so it actually seals.
Yes. Manufacturers use these industrial sealants thick butyl tape gaskets and sometimes these complex tongue-and-groove designs to create this really tight seal.
And the source said these high-end vaults have interior linings, right? Like heavy plastics or even precious metals like stainless steel, copper, or bronze.
Yeah, they can get incredibly elaborate.
But I have to push back on this. I mean, if I spend, say, $10,000 on a premium vault with a copper lining and heavy-duty gaskets, is it basically an underground submarine? Like, can it really keep water out forever?
What's fascinating here is that the sheer physics of what happens underground tells a completely different story. The short answer is no. It is absolutely not an invincible submarine.
Really? Because those glossy brochures at the funeral home definitely make it look like one.
Well, they heavily imply it. But the source material is super blunt about this. Nothing placed in the earth is permanent. You are dealing with incredibly chaotic, destructive conditions down there, specifically something called hydrostatic pressure.
Okay, hydrostatic pressure. How does that work in this situation?
Think about being in a swimming pool and trying to push an inflated beach ball underwater.
Oh, yeah, it violently wants to pop back up.
Exactly. The water aggressively fights you. So when it rains heavily or snow melts, the local water table rises and the soil around the vault becomes saturated. That groundwater acts just like the pool, exerting literal tons of upward and inward pressure on that sealed vault.
Wow, so the water is actively trying to crush it or pop the seal open.
Continually. And then you add expanding and contracting clay soils, shifting earth, and just the slow-motion power of tree roots. A root will find a microscopic flaw in a gasket and pry it apart over a decade.
That's wild. Mother Nature always wins.
Always. I mean, a premium vault can certainly resist water much better and longer than a basic liner, but guaranteeing it will stay permanently bone dry forever. That is just biologically and geologically impossible.
Which is probably why the FTC has rules about this, right?
Exactly. The Federal Trade Commission strictly restricts funeral providers from making false protective claims. A salesperson can say a vault helps resist water, but if they promise that nothing can ever get inside, they are breaking the law.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If a copper-lined vault can't even protect a metal casket forever, it definitely cannot protect the human remains inside it forever.
Right.
So myth number one has to be the promise of preservation, right?
Yes, and that is easily the most emotionally manipulative myth in the entire industry. This idea that spending thousands more on a heavier vault stops natural decomposition. It just doesn't.
It's just a box keeping dirt off another box.
Exactly. Decomposition is dictated by embalming, soil type, temperature, moisture, not by a concrete vault. The FTC funeral rule explicitly prohibits anyone from claiming that a vault will preserve human remains indefinitely.
Okay, so they can't promise preservation, but I definitely assumed before reading this guide that it was literally a state law that you had to buy one of these things.
You and almost everyone else. That is myth number 2, and it is the most successful misconception they have. The FTC clearly states that state laws do not require burial vaults or graveliners.
Wait, really? But if it's absolutely not required by state law, why are so many families told by salespeople that they have to buy one? Are they just openly lying to grieving people?
Well, it relies on this very clever game of semantics. There is a huge critical distinction between a state law and a private cemetery policy.
Oh, okay.
The government is not forcing you to buy a concrete box. But a private cemetery is totally within its rights to establish operating rules for its own physical property.
Got it. So the cemetery can say, hey, if you want to be buried on our grounds, you have to use an outer container so our mowers don't fall in a hole.
Correct. But during a stressful sales pitch, those two things get conflated. The salesperson just says the outer container is required. They don't clarify who requires it.
And you just assume it's the law, so you nod, pull out your credit card, and buy the expensive one.
Exactly. Conflating the two strips the buyer of all their negotiating power.
It's honestly just like dealing with a strict homeowners association, an HOA.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that HOA comparison is absolutely perfect.
Right, like the HOA can demand that your fence meets certain structural standards so the neighborhood looks nice, but they cannot force you to buy some imported, gold-plated fence if the basic wooden one meets their written rules.
Yes. And the FTC funeral rule is designed to protect you in that exact HOA scenario.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that cemeteries can set a structural requirement. But funeral providers must accurately disclose those requirements to you in writing.
So they can't just verbally put you toward the expensive vault.
Nope. They are federally required to give you an outer burial container price list, or at least list them clearly on their general price list. You have a right to see the cheap options on paper before they walk you into a showroom with the shiny display models.
That is such a massive takeaway for you listening right now. If they don't hand you that specific list, you have to actively ask for it. And what's crazy is you don't even have to buy the container from the funeral home, right?
Not at all. You can often satisfy the cemetery's rule by buying from a third-party vendor, like an independent vault company or a monument dealer. They offer the exact same products for way less money.
But the guide did warn about hidden fees there. Like, the cemetery might suddenly hit you with a huge inspection fee or handling fee just for bringing in an outside vault, which basically wipes out any money you saved.
Yeah, that is a very real, frustrating tactic, which is why you have to take back the power in that conversation. And you do that by asking one very specific question.
Okay, what's the magic question?
You look the director in the eye and you ask, what is the least expensive outer burial container that satisfies this cemetery's requirement?
Oh, I love that. What is the least expensive outer burial container that satisfies this cemetery's requirement? It totally cuts through all the marketing noise.
It forces them to stop selling the upgrade and just tell you what the baseline HOA rule actually is. And the answer to that question is almost always going to be the basic, unsealed Graveliner.
Are there any exceptions to this, though? Like scenarios where the whole structure and lawnmower rule doesn't apply?
Yeah, there are three main exceptions. The first is natural or green burials.
Oh, right, where the whole point is to return to the earth naturally.
Exactly. They use biodegradable shrouds or pine boxes to encourage biodegradation. So an industrial concrete box lined with plastic would completely ruin that process. Green cemeteries actually ban vaults entirely.
Makes sense. What's the second exception?
Mausoleums. If you are doing an above-ground entombment in a wall crypt, you don't use these containers. The concrete and steel of the building support the weight, so there's no earth pressure to worry about.
Okay, and the third?
Veteran cemeteries.
Yeah.
Government-run veteran cemeteries, state or national, have their own standardized rules. Often, the government actually provides the burial infrastructure as part of the veterans' benefits.
So you shouldn't assume the private market rules apply there.
Right. Always contact the VA directly to understand your benefits before you spend a single dime at a private funeral home.
So those are the logistical exceptions, but I want to talk about the emotional exception, because if I am sitting in that office and I've just lost someone I love deeply, I'm exhausted, I'm grieving.
It's the worst day of your life.
It is. And if the salesperson looks at me and says something like, well, you don't want your loved one exposed to the mud and the water, do you?
Ugh, yeah. It is a devastatingly effective, fear-based tactic.
Because it targets guilt. Like, isn't it going to feel incredibly disrespectful to consciously choose the cheapest, unsealed concrete box? It feels like I'm cheaping out on them.
That is the exact emotional trap they rely on. And the source guide addresses this so beautifully. It requires a really firm reality check. The dignity of your loved one is not measured by the price of the merchandise you bury underground.
Wow. Yeah, that is a profound way to look at it.
Choosing a basic Graveliner is just a practical, responsible choice to meet a landscaping rule. It says absolutely nothing about how much you love them. Now, if you want a premium vault because it brings you psychological comfort or it's a family tradition, that is a totally valid preference.
Right. There's no shame in buying the expensive one if you actually want it.
None at all. But it needs to be an informed choice, not one driven by guilt or this false belief that spending more equals caring more.
So what does this all mean when we're actually in the hot seat? Let's break down this four-step consumer framework the guide talks about.
Sure. So step one, identify what is actually required. Before you look at a catalog, ask the cemetery directly, is a basic liner enough to meet your structural rule?
Get the HOA rule straight, then step two.
Step two, identify available products. This is where you demand the written price list. Find the lowest cost basic liner and compare its price to the vaults. Ignore the shiny displays, just look at the numbers.
Okay, and if I am considering the upgrade, that's step three, right? Identify the added features.
Exactly. You ask, what does this extra $3,000 actually buy me? A polymer lining, a heavier lid. Strip away the emotional pitch and look strictly at the engineering.
Which leads to step four. Decide if those features are personally worth the cost. Like if a copper lining gives you peace of mind, buy it. But if you'd rather put that $3,000 toward your kid's college fund, buy the basic liner with zero guilt.
And this raises an important question about how we bundle these purchases in our heads. Families often buy a casket and a vault at the same time and assume they have to match.
Oh, like if I buy the really expensive metal casket, I need the expensive vault to protect it.
Yes, or the reverse thinking a heavy metal casket is strong enough on its own, so you don't need a liner at all. But as we know, the Earth always wins. The
Wow.
casket will eventually fail, and the cemetery will still demand a liner.
You really have to evaluate them completely separately.
You do. An expensive casket does not obligate you to buy an expensive vault.
This whole deep dive has been such a paradigm shift. We've gone from thinking these concrete boxes are magical, legally mandated preservation chambers to realizing they are literally just structural shipping boxes required to keep riding mowers level.
It really changes how you look at the whole process.
Hmm.
You now know how to navigate the FTC rules, ask for the right lists, and protect yourself from the emotional upselling.
It totally transforms a moment of extreme vulnerability into a moment of true empowerment. But as we wrap up today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought that goes a bit deeper than price lists and hydrostatic pressure.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, the source is super blunt that the crushing weight of the soil, the groundwater, the passage of time, it will eventually compromise everything. Even a copper-lined premium vault will eventually surrender.
The Earth always reclaims what is placed inside it.
Right, so it makes you wonder, why are we culturally so obsessed with trying to permanently freeze this natural process? We spend billions trying to engineer an escape from the biological reality of the Earth. Does our attempt to seal away the past in these expensive underground fortresses actually just disconnect us from the natural cycle of life that we're all inevitably a part of?
That is a really powerful question to sit with.
Think about that the next time you walk through a serene, perfectly level cemetery park. There is a whole lot more going on beneath the surface than just landscaping. Take this knowledge with you, use it to protect your family, and stay curious.